right, so I'm Arne Meyer. I'm the community strategist at Naughty Dog. We're here talking about The Last of Us.
This is our routine. Day and night, all we do is survive. It never lets up.
I mean, the inspiration really came from a lot of places. One of the things is we really wanted to investigate human relationships and the dynamics of different humans, different people, and what their personalities are like when they're pushed to certain limits and what choices they're trying to make at that point. And we really wanted to create a situation where humans were pushed to the extremes in terms of trying to survive, so that they were making really interesting choices, not really paying attention to what was right or wrong, but really how far am I going to do to survive? Am I going to kill? Am I going to, kill only certain people? Am I going to try to rebuild society? So what kind of conditions do we need to do that? And sort of, we looked at different ways to try to create that, and we wanted to do something that felt very grounded. We did some research in terms of how people reacted with disease and like paranoia and pandemics, and this sort of really created an interesting thought. Okay, when we saw the BBC Earth video with the fungal infection taking over the ants, and it's a disease that people wouldn't understand. Okay, like that's a great starting point. It's like, all right, then we just kept taking it further, and we're like, okay, like when it takes over humans, it's such a threat that it starts pushing people back into interesting choices. It decimates, because if you still have structure in society, right? If you still have infrastructure, there's still sort of this fallback. So it's really sort of like trying to create the perfect conditions to explore human nature. Well, we always thought it was more interesting to look at what humans are doing to each other than towards the infected, right? Like the infected have a singular purpose for them, which is to sort of spread the infection. That's not really interesting. Like, I mean, it's an interesting creature, it's an interesting concept of disease, but when you're thinking about cutscenes, when you think about narrative, that's really not what's interesting. What's interesting are the people who still have free will. Like you and me, or the characters in our game, and sort of that's where the narrative starts to be really interesting, because it is about, are you honest? Do you betray? Like there are all these complex different things that really just sort of, you have so many options narratively. You can create such different dynamic characters out of it, and like with Joel and Ellie, we're really able to create two different characters that are studying contrast basically, and explore how their character arcs intersect and grow over the course of a game. It's a really great basis. There's a couple parts to it. So actually, back in Uncharted 2, there was a sequence that we had in the ice caves where Drake and Tenzin had to go through the ice caves, sort of traverse through it, and they couldn't speak the same language. They had to learn how to trust each other, and they were sort of speaking to each other, but they couldn't, sort of trying to understand. And that was really interesting for us, to sort of like how these two people had to sort of trust each other in the most dangerous situations, and how that strengthened their bond over this little sequence. It's like, how can we explore that further? And that's sort of where the bases come from. It's like, well, the dynamics between two people and how they're constantly changing and evolving based on the situation they're in, the people they encounter, ended up being something really interested in investigating. So then it was like, all right, what kinds of characters work for us? Why not we decided that having two people together, or at least two people together, it was something that we wanted to do. Well, a lot, really. I mean, the moment we were like, okay, you're going to have a player control character and an NPC with them all the time, and we're like, well, like we had the community thinking, we knew the community would think, oh, it's another escort mission, or like babysitting mission. We wanted to make sure that we didn't do that. We wanted to make sure our AI was sophisticated enough to handle a lot of situations. So Ellie can, when you're trying to be stealthy and you're trying to hide or flank enemies, Ellie will know not to be seen. She'll also be behind cover. She'll try to make sure that the enemies don't run into her. But she's also capable in that later on, when she looks for an opportunity, maybe you're in trouble, maybe you're sneaking, that she can distract an enemy. She'll throw a brick and distract them. And you'll see her grow in terms of what she's capable of over time. I mean, she hasn't been exposed to what the world is like outside the quarantine zone. And, it's a really rough world. It's very difficult. For her, even the quarantine zone, it's a difficult situation. It's still kind of safe. So you'll see her grow in terms of what she's capable of to deal with the fact that people can be terrible in the outside world. It's something that it carries over from all of our Uncharted games. We always try to take a look at does it fit with the story? We really want a particular narrative. We want a story to tell, and it's something that so far to date we found is very difficult to do in a way that we feel okay with. The moment you introduce two independently controlled characters, it's hard to control the pacing, it's hard to control the narrative because someone's going to go off and explore something else. Or maybe people are joking around, right? And we're telling kind of a very mature, serious game here, or story here, so we want to make sure that you're sort of immersed and you invested in that. So for us it hasn't worked. I mean, it looks like it could be an option. Maybe one day we can figure out a way to take care of all of those things at once, but not right now. The crafting system is actually really interesting. It's one of the ways to help you survive in this world because we want you to scavenge, we want you to explore the world. You can pick up different pieces and you can craft different items. And we're actually introducing the concept that you have to make a choice when you're crafting. So many items use the same ingredients. So when you're entering into a combat situation, you can craft beforehand. You can decide, well, do I want to craft something that helps me offensively, like a Molotov cocktail or a bomb, or an upgrade on my melee weapon, or do I want to craft something that's a little bit more defensive in nature, whether it's a smoke bomb or a first aid kit. So you have to make that choice, especially you can only have so many supplies. And then the other thing too is it's like, not knowing what situation you're running into, do you want to craft beforehand and then realize, well, I made the wrong thing, or do you want to wait until you're in combat, let's say, but then you have to find a moment of safety when you realize, oh, I need this, let me craft it, because it's all that happens in real time. So I think that's one of the ways. I mean, I think another one's just sort of the balance between action and sort of survival in the stealthy modes. Knowing when to sit back and try to hide and flank, or basically like run away and regroup, and knowing when you can have the advantage on humans. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the greatest thing about having sort of humans that have their own, it's not free will, but in the game, sort of free will where they're trying to cooperate and they can communicate with each other. That's a completely different type of combat. They're aware of what weapons you have. If you have a gun and they don't have a gun, they're not going to try to run at you because they know that you'll be able to kill them instantly. Or if you're trying to be stealthy and there's two guys who are talking to each other and you take out one guy silently and the guy doesn't respond, he's going to go investigate and wonder about that. So there's a lot of things you need to think about. You need to think about what these humans are. Well, on the flip side, we're introducing even greater variety because we have the infected and we have different classes of the infected, all with different strengths and weaknesses and different difficulty. We've only actually so far introduced two stages of the infected. We've actually worked out like a full life cycle for it. And even within those two stages, there's variety in terms of how to approach them. The runners are fast, they tend to attack in groups, but you can, they're a little bit weaker, you can take them out in melee, they're a little bit easier to kill. Clickers are usually, they can be in groups, but they don't work that way, they're a little bit more individual. But they're very, very strong. You can't go after them with sort of hand-to-hand combat because they'll kill you at that point. But they can't see you, right? They rely on their hearing. So there's just two examples of how it's great to have infected humans because they provide such a wide variety and keep things different when you're in combat. One of the things we've always done with all of our games is we wanted it to feel grounded in the universe that we've created and feel believable. Everything is stylized a little bit, but we wanted to evoke the right emotions from you as a player. And to do that, if something's way too fantastical, we feel that it starts to get a little bit more difficult. We want you to identify with the other humans. So, apart from just happening to run across this like great inception for the idea of why the world is like this, having this sort of grounded reality just fits into everything else that we do. I mean, when you look at the world of The Last of Us and you look at how sort of the buildings are dilapidated and nature is sort of taking over again, That's all meant to sort of blend the unfamiliar, which is sort of this dystopian look, and things that you recognize, so it does feel grounded. It's not some fantastical universe that you don't have an investment in. Well, one would hope, right? Like, that was the look of, like, I hope so, I mean, the game isn't out yet, so we hope that, sales are good. We spent a lot of time and resources in this universe, so it'd be nice to, find an opportunity to tell more stories. I think the reception will tell whether that's something we have the opportunity to explore. And The Last of Us comes out on June 14th of this year, exclusively for the PlayStation 3.